What's it like to win a Nobel Prize? And does it change your life? Does it not? Is it something you aspired to, or is it just a result of doing what you love?
So basically, just to start at the end, I think it's something you should never aspire to because it's an unpredictable thing. And there are people who, on the 10th of October, whatever the day is, are always listening to the television. For them, it's like Groundhog Day. Gee, I thought I was going to get it. I didn't get it. I did not expect it at all. About changing your life, it actually depends where you're living. Because the Nobel Prize is, surprise, not changing your life. The surprise aspect, what's it like? Depends where you live. If you live in Europe, it's announced in Sweden at noon, you hear it AM or something like that, no big deal. If you're on the East Coast at 6 a.m., but if you're in California, it's 2:15. And unless you're one of those who sit up to see how they didn't get it each year, you're asleep. So I was asleep in California. I remember looking at the clock, it was 2:16, and I was asleep. It's a big surprise. I mean, it's a true high, 15 cups of espresso type high. Then after a week, you sort of say, well, gee, I keep on saying the same nonsense. It's way more boring to talk about what you did in the past than to talk about perspectives of coronavirus, because it's actually current. It's not about me, it's about the world. And your opinion is just the same as mine. If I'm talking to you about my past, big deal. But I think that what is interesting is that after a while, you suddenly realize, gee, for the past week, I haven't actually thought. Talking about your past is not really thinking, it's regurgitating. And you suddenly realize that being able to think is a real luxury in life. Then you also realize, well, I'm exactly the same as I was a week ago. Why should it change my life? But then one thing kicks in. When I was 18, 19, 20, I came to England as a student from South Africa, and I met the most incredible Nobel Prize winning scientists. People like Francis Crick, whom I worked with, who discovered the DNA. I mean, just people who were like the greatest of, up there in the Einstein class. And I suddenly realized that I thought these guys were gods. No, they weren't. They probably felt exactly the same as I did. Oh, what a drag, I want to go home and I want to have my dinner and whatever. But realized that people who have been recognized in this way, have been touched in this way, have a duty to actually try to infect other people with a passion for science. And so, then you just basically do it. You give lectures. My current lecture is entitled A Wonderful Life in Science, because I do think I've had a wonderful life in science. And, science is full of surprises. It's cool because you also meet people of all ages. You don't really feel that you're necessarily getting too old because your students are always the same age. And so there's a lot of good things about it. So actually, it does change your life, but I think it changes your life by giving you an extra dimension. I also think that my sort of desire or getting involved in Corona like this has been a feeling that I'm allowed to speak out. No one's going to cut me off. And if they do, it's going to be hard for them. And since I'm not saying anything that is, truly disagreeable, everything I'm saying is backed by numbers, it's my duty to try and speak up for sanity. I must say I was very disappointed that none of my colleagues, Nobel Prize winners meet each other all the time. We go to meetings together, we do stuff like that together. And I was about the only one who really went out on a limb. And, people said to me, you're not an epidemiologist. And I said, well, I understand data. And I've worked on dynamic systems all along, so there should be no deal about this. But it was also an obligation. You could actually make the following thing. So take Britain. A decision was made to lock down. That's a hard decision. It's not a decision. It's a very, very hard decision to make. And that should have been preceded by a meeting of 20 of the best minds in the country, of all kinds, lawyers, sociologists, business people. We want as maximum people in broadcasting, people who actually think. And then the decision should have been made. Instead, it looks like it was a decision made, maybe pushed by one or two scientists based on unsure information. Information is always unsure. Information has to be tested. I have tried very hard from the very beginning. So I started on the first thing I published was on the 2nd of February. And then I just sent out these reports every day to China. By the middle of March, I had a much bigger report. And I sent it to people saying, engage with me. Don't tell me it's nonsense. It's easy to do the calculations yourself. Get out Excel. Let's do it together. There was almost no engagement. And I think that is also a failing of society, because hard problems are way better solved by a group of people than by one person. Committees are actually very good. If they're well set up, are very good at solving problems. So there have been some shortcomings.
Yeah, well, you're right, though. I mean, having that, Nobel Prize behind your name does mean that people aren't necessarily going to cut you off, and they'll listen to the numbers. And if it is about the numbers, then it's hard to argue with those. So that's why I think, your voice has kind of risen, and when you articulate yourself, it just makes a lot of sense. But I guess the norm in science maybe is not to do that, to not stick your head above the parapet and to kind of move as the group.
And you could make the argument that in some sense, I have immunity in the language that we've been speaking, because no one's going to be able to take away what I've already had, and I can do that. But I think that everyone had this obligation, at least to discuss it, not to shut things down. There was a huge amount of shutting. It was lockdown. Lockdown wasn't just at home. It was a lockdown of people's minds. It was a general sort of lockdown, turn off the switch and not discuss it. People were frightened. Because even the other thing that's amazed me is the level of censorship that's practiced by, your channel is obviously very aware of this, but videos that go into YouTube and then disappear. And, and again, I'm not going to get political. Twitter has been great. But it seems to me that you have to be, if you say anything that goes against what the World Health Organization said is not allowed, well, that's not a good thing to say, because a lot of what they said actually wasn't correct. And, they were very much against masks at first. And then a few days ago, it was asymptomatic cases don't infect. We don't know the answer. I think the real answer in science is usually, we don't know, let's discuss it. And that's always like that. Yeah. Probably true in many walks of life.